All right. Welcome back to season 4 of Get to the Joke. I am Marc Stoudemire, and I am honored to be here with veteran stand-up comic and author and Second City improviser, Mr. Michael Lukas. Michael or Mike grew up in Cleveland and has been touring internationally as a stand-up comic and an improviser for 24 years. And then decided at one point that he had enough of stand up and decided to go into writing full time. He has been on NBC, Comedy Central, CBS Radio, and A&E. Michael is here to talk about his new book, Finding Your Funny Muscle. You can find Mike Lukas on funnymuscle.com. Mike, it's great to be here with you today.
Who is this guy you introduced? He sounds wonderful. I'm shocked he's not famous. Have you done all that? I'm surprised I don't know him.
I don't know.
Who is
Those credits are pretty awesome.
right?
Don't sell yourself short, my friend.
This guy's impressive, but he should be famous.
I appreciate you joining us. Are you joining us from Cleveland right now? Is that where you currently are?
No, actually, I am in the bowels of Dallas, Texas. This is
Okay.
where my wife grew up, and so
Okay.
we moved. I lived in Cleveland for about 5 years from about I guess from about 2000 to 2014, and then we decided to come down here and
Nice.
live in the house that my wife grew up in. So
Oh,
there's a
sick.
lot of emotional trauma that we're constantly unveiling here.
That's hilarious, dude. I'm extremely excited to talk about your book. I
Thanks.
kind of what I know you have been an author for a while, writing a lot of blog posts, which people can read if they want to. At funnymuscle.com has some of your published articles on there, which I was checking out. But why, I guess, let me start out with why this book. And if you want to kind of explain what the book is about, that would probably be a good way to get into it. And then why decide to write a book like this?
It's yeah. I've been writing this book since probably the late '90s when I was living in Chicago, and then I couldn't figure out how to do it. Then started it in when I was in Las Vegas working with Second City. Still couldn't figure out how to do it. I was teaching a stand-up class there, and I was trying to put this idea together. And then finally, just recently, in the last couple of years, I began helping some stand-up comics, some newer stand-up comedians, and by helping them, it clicked. Like all of a sudden, I figured out how I wanted to do this book, and then it just all came together. And then it's called Finding Your Funny Muscle. And the premise of the book is basically that the same way that if say you're a guitar player and you wanted to learn how to play the guitar and be more musical, you take lessons and you learn how the guitar works, and then you practice and then you get better. Well, I was like, well, there should be able to do that with being funny. If we could figure out how being funny works, we could practice it, and then we could get funnier. And you might not be playing Carnegie Hall, but you might be funnier to your friends and to your family and to your
Mm-hmm.
coworkers. So that's what I was really trying to do this whole time. I just couldn't figure out how to get that across to people that might not be in the business.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally figured out, and it came painfully. The lesson came painfully that created this book. I did this was on my second Tonight Show appearance. This was back in 1997. Back in the 1900s, Mark. You said comedy was different back then. We had rubber chickens. It was no, but I did a first Tonight Show set, and it went really well. And they asked me to come back, and then I burned up all my best material. I'd only been doing a comedy for about 6 years at that point. And so I burned up I didn't know how to do TV sets. So I just used all my best material for the first set, just crammed it all in and just stripped away all the smaller jokes and just, gave them barfed off all the big bits. And then they were like, asked me to come back, and I was like, so I got to do five more minutes. And it's not as easy as it sounds. So then what I came to realize is that I was missing a couple of things. The first thing I realized I was missing was what I call the comedy lens. And that's basically how you like the lens, the sort of the porthole that you look at life through in order to find your humor. And so at the time, my best comedy lens, and a lot of comics have a good comedy lens. Like for instance, Seinfeld is, he makes a big deal out of nothing. Rodney Dangerfield is, and I don't get any respect, or I get no respect. That's a great impersonation.
If I don't mind stopping you here, so is comedy lens? Are you trying to find? Is it a better way of saying like you're trying to help comics find their brand. So when you talk about Seinfeld, something out of nothing, and Ryan Dangerfield, like the kind of the schmuck approach, you're like, hey, this book is going to help identify, hey, this is the brand that's best suited for big laughs.
It's a real good way to look at it, because truly the comedy lens it turns out to be your brand. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have one, you have no brand, and you become what I call the corner quipper.
Mm-hmm.
A guy who's funny or a girl who's funny, but there's you can't remember what they say because they're not coming from any particular place. With a
Yeah.
comedy lens, it adds sort of like your own flavor to each comedy bit, and also helps you to narrow down what you want to talk about and how you want to make it funny. And when
Okay.
I didn't have that
Mm-hmm.
back then, I was the best comedy lens I had. I called myself the tall bald comic.
Okay.
So like nothing that anyone couldn't just guess just by staring at me. It gave them nothing. It gave the crowd nothing to remember. They're like, well,
Yeah.
he certainly is tall, and we can't argue with the bald part. The comic part we're beginning to debate, but I realized I that wasn't enough, and
Mm-hmm.
so over time I developed a better comedy lens, one that showed a little bit more vulnerability. Now you don't have to rip open your core wounds to have a good comedy lens, but you
Mm-hmm.
got to basically share with your audience like something you might not want to tell like if you walked in on an elevator and you wouldn't want to maybe say it right to everybody, all these strangers, because what it does is that's what makes you interesting to strangers. Something
Okay.
different, something off, something weird, some take that you have that
Mm-hmm.
that no one else seems to have. So right now I call myself the clumsy aspie hole. So what I came to realize, because before part of an aspie hole is, just so you know, I don't know how much you know about
No, I know
Asperger's.
that. Yes, you're very open about your Asperger's, which I think is commendable. I have a
Right?
cousin who has
Yeah.
Asperger's, so yeah, no, it's nice that you're bringing more
Right.
awareness to it. But go ahead, go. I don't want to
Yeah,
stop you
well,
there.
yeah, and just for anyone who might not know,
Mm-hmm.
Asperger's is just like on the more functional end of the autism spectrum. And
Mm-hmm.
so the problem with Asperger's is we're functional enough where we for a long time don't even know we are what we are. So
Mm-hmm.
we mask, we pretend that we're not this, because who wants to be anything on some spectrum, right? Well, I kind of finally realized I should probably like admit that I have a lot of these qualities that make me less emotional. I have a harder time dealing with people. I sometimes say the truth, not realizing that it could be offensive, and that people don't want to always hear that. And there's a whole series of things that traits that we have. And so I realized that that makes me kind of an aspie hole, like I unchecked. If you don't understand you're this, you sometimes are unchecked. A good
Okay.
example would be like Dwight Schrute from The
The
Office,
Office.
or
Yeah.
who's the other one? Anyway, so
Uh,
so what I realize is also I'm very clumsy. I'm emotionally and physically clumsy, and I've always wanted to be an athlete. So it kills me to admit that. So I'm a clumsy aspie hole. But basically, I expect so much from the world, but I'm totally incapable of coming up, fulfilling that myself. So I end
okay.
up constantly backfiring on myself. So, the high and mighty falling is what I think is funny. That's why I love Monty Python. That's why I love,
Oh, awesome.
Spinal Tap, things like,
Yeah.
you know,
Nice.
um, right. So that was the first thing. I realized that I didn't have a comedy lens, and that
Mm-hmm.
and then I looked around and I said a lot of new comedians don't also understand that that's so
Mm-hmm.
important. And
Mm-hmm.
what it does is it gives you a real focus point to begin to identify your material, but it also gives you a way to be remembered by an audience.
Yeah.
And the second part that I realized in doing that second Tonight Show is I realized that I didn't really know how to write a joke. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand the full process that goes into writing a joke, and that's what I call the flex of the funny muscle. The funny muscle to me, everyone always talks about a funny bone, and I'm like, nah, funny is not a bone. Bones are like hard and rigid.
Uh-huh.
Funny is a muscle, man. You can work it, you can stretch it, it goes all over the place, and
Yeah.
so that's where I kind of came up with the funny muscle thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I realized, I came up, I created this thing I called the humor blueprint, and it's kind of like a premise, setup, punchline, outline, but it adds a lot more elements to it
Mm-hmm.
to sort of walk you through how to use that and apply that process to your humor. Because otherwise,
Nice.
premise, setup, and punchline is kind of dry. Like, how do you apply that to a
Yeah.
regular premise?
Well,
With
not
the
to
with
sell
the
yourself short, because you're making it sound like you didn't develop this lens until much later, but you were a successful stand-up comic. Now, I know you got
Yeah,
your roots. You went to school at the University of Dayton for computer programming. You were working at AT&T, and I think I think you're
yeah, you know that.
talking about you were that guy, the quipper, when you just talked about the fact that, like, hey, there's definitely this bridge that takes you from like the office funny guy, which you were, to stand up. I think that's why your book is so relevant and important, because you actually live both those lives. Um, kind of tell me the kind of why you got into stand up. I mean, it sounds like your boss came to you in AT&T and said, "Hey Mike, you're really funny." But I mean, like my sister is, I do this all the time. I say my sister is funny. I tell her to go do stand up, she's
Right.
going to say no. So what got you onto that stage? What was the thing that, like, all right, this is how I'm going to get up and start telling jokes in front of strangers? Was it just the boss, or was there a little more to it?
Well, it's very funny you asked that because as a Aspie, like we typically don't want to be around people. We don't want to be the attention, you know. And so there's a real egoic part of me that wanted the attention. It wanted
Mhm.
that wanted to make people laugh. Ever since I was little, I could as a kid I could make adults laugh. And you know,
Mhm.
if you can make adults laugh as a kid, that's very difficult to do. You know,
Mhm.
if it's not like pity laughs.
Yeah.
But I was getting some applause breaks. Family reunions, standing ovations. Yeah. And so what got me to the stage, I guess, I was in high school theater,
Okay.
and then I was Bill Sykes in Oliver. Perhaps
Oh
you've
wow.
read some of my reviews. One of them being he forgot his lines in the middle of a song. Thank you very much. I panicked, and
Yeah.
I was it's strong men da 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 da. I started just saying da 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 because I couldn't remember the words. And yeah, so that became my biggest nightmare, was to forget my
Mhm.
words in the middle of any kind of performance from that point on. But then I didn't think you can make a living entertaining, so I went to college and learned how to do computers, MIS,
Mhm.
management information systems. It's sort of like
Mhm.
the interpreter between the programmers and the users. And I got a job at AT&T doing that. And I was always holding court in my cubicle.
Mhm.
There's people, like looking over the cubicle, like waiting to laugh. And so if you were just walking by, from my boss's perspective, you just saw six heads peeked over a cubicle, all laughing, and me doing my work, cracking them up
Yeah.
as I'm doing it. So he finally called me in the office. He was like, "Mike, you're doing a great job, but why are you here? What are you
Yeah.
doing?" And so I finally realized, oh, maybe I need to do something different. So I took an
Mhm.
acting class, and then I did some a stand-up contest in Cincinnati at the Funny Bone. Have you been
Yeah.
at that?
I have
You went
not.
back?
I have not, but I don't want to get too far ahead. We're going to be here a while, Mike. I want to really understand and learn and digest who you are, and why the book is
Sure, sure.
important, because I think if I'm going just based on what I know about the book, and again, it's at the time of this interview, it has not been released yet, so I haven't had a copy of it. But I think the audience of for your book are people who are quote unquote the funny guy, either the bar funny guy or the Alice funny guy, and have maybe an inkling or a curiosity in entering the world of stand up. Would you agree or disagree with that? Is that
I
the
think
audience
for
of the book?
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
that's one of the main people that I
Okay.
want to benefit from the
So
book.
I want to just then talk about, like, I think, like, to kind of layer in the book in with like the world of stand up, because I think it's what your book does is a great service to helping people who really want to get into comedy, just don't know how to write jokes. But I think I want to also talk about the business of comedy as well. Hi. I'm assuming if you're still watching at this point that you're enjoying the episode. If you like this episode and you want to see more, please do me a small favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That is awesome. I love seeing subscribers go up. That means people are enjoying what I'm doing, which makes me feel good. So please do that if you're really liking this. And if you want to, check out my website, markstod.com. Please feel free to contact me on the website. I respond to every email. Every email I respond to. Leave a comment. And the thing too, I get back to most of those as well. And that's it for me. Enjoy the rest of the episode. And the one thing that I was there, listening, reading some stuff that you've been up to, and your life story is, you had a pretty cool experience. You auditioned and became a host at what was at the time MGM Studios in Disney World,
Yep.
now called Hollywood Studios, after MGM separated themselves from that. You were
Oh,
like the comedian host, and I wanted, and the thing there was a line there that really caught my attention. I think this is a trend, and it's where your mom actually was like, "Mike, this is an opportunity for you," and there
yeah,
does seem to be that support system. I think for comics who are successful,
yeah,
I would, and as much as you put yourself down, being on the Tonight Show and making a living from stand up makes you a successful stand up. So I believe you are
sure.
very successful. Um, was your mother, were your, I don't know, I mean, you didn't talk about your dad, but I don't know, were your parents very like supportive of like leaving I mean, at the time, being in computer programming was probably very risky at the time, but also a
Yeah,
very fruitful career. I mean, you could have made a lot of money. Where they
yeah.
stand? Where they stand with like going from, also your mom seems supportive, but did she think that you were going to go all in on stand-up comedy at one point?
Yeah, my parents have always been supportive, both my mom and dad, and they paid for my college education at the University of Dayton. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to sit down with my dad
Mm-hmm.
at one point, and tell him that I was going to be a stand-up comedian, and he
Mm-hmm.
said, go for it. He said, if that's what makes you
Nice.
happy, that's the important thing. But
Mm-hmm.
in terms of my mom, I
Mm-hmm.
think what you're talking about, yeah, this is a good story. When I was at AT&T, and I was taking that acting class,
Mm-hmm.
my mom cut out this article that said, funny people wanted, and that was at MGM Studios, and
Yeah.
they were hiring for the Superstar Television, which is a show, a 3-camera shoot where they put
Mm-hmm.
the audience into the television world and the movie
Mm-hmm.
world by with special effects, and they needed a host, of many
Mm-hmm.
to make that happen. So what I did was, they said, we want a 1-minute monologue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked with my acting teacher at the time, and I was like, well, what can I do in 1 minute? What happens in 1 minute? And I was like, well, an
Mm-hmm.
elevator ride happens in a minute. So
Mm-hmm.
why don't I do, the audition was actually in Cleveland, and
Mm-hmm.
so I said, why don't I do the terminal tower? There is a big building in the middle of Cleveland. I said, why don't I do an elevator ride that goes from the bottom floor to the top floor, where there's a really fancy restaurant, and we'll call it the Luxurvator, and it'll just
Mm-hmm.
be like an entertainment elevator, but it only lasts for a minute
Yeah.
to entertain all these rich people going to their fancy meals. So the first character I played was an old, I played an old man who was the elevator. I called him the control panel engineer. Basically, he
Yeah.
pushed the buttons. So then he welcomed everybody into the thing, and he did a little speech and got the floor. And then he welcomes the entertainment. And then so I had a microphone in my back pocket. It wasn't hooked up to anything. I whipped it out and I spun around, and I played a lounge singer. And I was just doing things like, when we get behind closed doors. Seriously, look how close they are. Hey, anyway, so how long have you been in the elevator? You only been here for a second, And I just did. I worked the crowd, all the way up, and then right in the middle of a song, I was like, "Ding! All right, we're here. I'll see you on the way back down." And so, it was a minute, and they loved it. They were just laughing, and it killed.
Yeah.
I got called back, and then I got measured, and then the funny thing was that I was working at AT&T, a phone
Mm-hmm.
company, and at
Mm-hmm.
the time, this would have been like 1989. There was no caller ID. There was no
Mm-hmm.
facial recognition, or we didn't even know where you were calling from. It was just a phone call. So I
Yeah.
called in sick from Cleveland to Cincinnati so I could do the call back. And I was like, I can't make it in for another day. I'm sorry. This is really getting me. It must be congestion. And I ended up getting measured and videotaped, and I ended up
Nice.
getting the job. And so I quit this corporate job to
Mm-hmm.
do corporate theater, and it was fantastic, because during
Nice.
that time I fell in love with stand-up comedy, because
Mm-hmm.
I'd done that open mic contest in Cincinnati at that Funny
Mm-hmm.
Bone, and it was just nerve-wracking. I was
Mm-hmm.
throwing up, diarrhea. I did a good set, but my stomach was just horrifying. The whole
Mm-hmm.
week beforehand, I just didn't want to think about it. And then, as I was performing every day over and over again at Disney MGM Studios in
Mm-hmm.
Orlando, I got over my stage fright. I just
Mm-hmm.
began be very comfortable. I learned how to use a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how, and I was getting paid. And so
Mm-hmm.
all the skills you have as a comedian, how do you address a crowd that you've never talked to before? How do you
Yeah.
look at them? How are you using your microphone? Are you holding your microphone like this? Are you
Mm-hmm.
are you holding it too loose?
Mm-hmm.
Do you stumble when you even take it out of the stand? I mean, there are
Mm-hmm.
these like little things that indicate whether you're a pro or a newbie. I
Mm-hmm.
was learning, and then finally I was like, I think I can do some stand up. So there was a workshop. Vicky Rousman was the lady, rest in
Yeah.
peace.
Mm-hmm.
She was she had this workshop in Orlando, and that's where I really started learning the art of stand up, was through her.
So what yeah, so the Vicky Rossman thing that had a big impact, I noticed on
Huge.
you, was the workshop she was given. Then she gave you like open mic spots, you did contests, she got you more and more reps.
Right.
um what would you say, that like young Mike Lucas starting out in comedy, like what was your joke writing style at the time? Because it's very interesting. I would assume working for Disney,
Yeah.
ultra, like not conservative politically, but conservative, like you have to be squeaky clean. Was that who
Yeah.
you were, or using that lens that you talk about in the book? Were you conflicted because there was the Disney Mike and then there was the Vicky
Right.
Rossman? Tell me a little bit about that and how that kind of sorted out into the lens eventually that you developed.
Sure. Well, Vicky was very adamant about being clean.
Hmm.
She was training us to be openers
Okay.
and middle acts because
Hmm.
that's what they needed in Orlando for that
Hmm.
club. There was two clubs. What was it called?
The
Uh
improv.
no,
Okay.
I keep wanting to say Zanies, but that's in Chicago. I'll think of it.
Okay.
But there was two main clubs. Bonkers was one of the clubs in Orlando, and then they
Hmm.
had two. It was Brad Greenberg Comedy Zones. That's what it was.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
why I couldn't think of it. But
Okay.
Comedy Zones was a big. There was a series of comedy zones around Florida
Hmm.
and Georgia, so it was really a good thing to get into that group.
Hmm.
So yeah, so Vicky was training us to be clean so that we could
Okay.
open the shows, and she was
Hmm.
basically looking for free MCs, and and
Yeah.
and she wanted them to have similar skills
Hmm.
in being able to introduce people in a clean way and do a couple of minutes to warm the crowd up. But I was filthy. I wanted to be dirty. And I couldn't stand that I had to be clean at Disney. So my stand up was a place where I could really let loose. And I realized,
Hmm.
I'm entertaining these drunk people, and the more dirtier I get, the more they laugh. And
Yeah.
and this is, I mean, Florida comedians had a
Hmm.
reputation for that because we were working in some really gritty situations. Where you'd have a group of young sailors who are training at the
Yeah.
nearby facility, and then they come in and they want to see basically, we can't see a stripper, then you better curse, boy.
Yeah.
So, so we were
It's
really giving
Florida.
them what they
It's what you're
wanted.
saying. It's Florida. Anything
Yeah,
goes.
exactly. Yes, yes. You get it. You get it.
Yeah.
Florida man does comedy. So,
So, what does your book say about that then? Does your book kind of approach, how does it talk about the clean versus blue humor as far as finding that lens? Does it touch on that at all?
I do. And one of the things I do in there is the top 10 things unfunny people do,
Hmm.
and the top 10 mistakes that unfunny people make.
Hmm.
And that's one of them, is to go blue, especially when you're using that as a cheap laugh.
Hmm.
To me, good comedy is about good choices.
Hmm.
There's a lot of choices you have for punchlines. One of
Hmm.
the things I give in the book, there's 36 humor heightening devices. These are
Hmm.
different devices that pro comics use
Hmm.
to heighten an idea to get laughs out of it. That's how you get the flex. You have to
Hmm.
distract them. You set them up to think of one thing, and then you get that you satisfy the same setup with something very surprising.
Hmm.
How do you come up with those surprising things? Well, these heightening devices help you come up with them, and that's
Hmm.
what in the book I teach you how to use the humor blueprint to do that over and over again. So you
Hmm.
have you could have 7, 8, 9, 10 punchlines to choose from, and you choose the one that best fits you and your lens.
Hmm.
And so that's what I began to realize is I needed to be able to use a better lens in that process.
Yeah, okay, cool. Very cool. So what would you say, like, starting out, so you like, were you actually developing an act in doing the Disney stuff and doing Vicky
Yeah.
Rossman's workshop that you use later on,
Oh
or would
yeah.
they kind of just give you the foundation and then you like the act that we see like on when you're on the Tonight Show and Conan, were those, was there any roots to that in what you were doing in Disney, or was it completely after you got more tenured in the comedy world? Like, what would you
Yeah,
say?
by the time I did the Tonight Show stuff, I had done Chicago, like the Florida stuff. Like you asked
Mm-hmm.
me originally, like what was my act like?
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. I had no control over myself. I was like, everybody should listen to, it was like kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
unfettered energy.
Mm-hmm.
I was like obviously new, and when I
Mm-hmm.
watch myself, I just cringe. I have a
We
feeling
all do.
of the
Yeah.
right. You can't help it
Yeah.
because you're so new at it. But in
Mm-hmm.
in in my heart, I felt like I was really good, and I was getting
Mm-hmm.
laughs, and but sometimes they're laughing at you and not with you, and you don't realize it when you're new. Uh, but 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 what I ended up being able to do was be able to hone that energy. And so
Mm-hmm.
what my act became
Mm-hmm.
was like a conversation
Mm-hmm.
between a straight man, which was me, and then
Mm-hmm.
my characters, which was me. And then the
Mm-hmm.
characters could be wild and weird,
Mm-hmm.
and they wouldn't always be other people. Like for instance, one of my big bits that I did, and I even use this in the book
Mm-hmm.
to help illustrate the humor blueprint,
Mm-hmm.
is it was called the bed seduction bit. And the bed seduction bit, at the time, I just I was doing a lot of heavy drinking, and I had to get up early to do
Mm-hmm.
a lot of like TV and radio
Mm-hmm.
promotion for the shows, and I
Mm-hmm.
just couldn't stand getting up early. So I wrote this bit where I said that the bed was trying, you know, like I'm not lazy. My bed was trying to seduce me back into bed.
Yeah.
It was tempting. So the whole thing was a conversation between my bed where, you know, I was like, you know, oh, I got to get up. I got to get early. This is going to into my bed. I'd be like, Michael, bed? Michael, you look good. Oh, thanks, bed. It's pretty early, but I appreciate it. You know, and then, you know, eventually the joke was,
Mhm.
you know, I want you in me. With the bed would say, I want you in me, and then so I'd be in the bed, and then finally the climax of the scene was me snoring, and just, you know, that was the climax
I've
of
seen
the
the bit.
interaction.
No, I've seen the bit. It's very
You
funny.
know, so yeah, so you know the
Yeah,
bit. Okay, so
yeah,
right.
I know the
So
bit. I
so
know the bit, and
that
I'm gonna
combination
link it. I'm
of
gonna link it to the show so others can
okay,
see the
good.
bit as well. But
Yeah.
I think what you did is very similar to what Ellen does, in that her like, "Hey God, it's me," or, you know, "Are you there, God?" or whatever joke, where you're
Right.
having this conversation with someone who's just not there. And I
Exactly.
think this kind of parlays into that. How did you your life story was all kind of like these highlight reels. I want to like you go from Disney World and then you go right to Second City. I'm like, well,
Right. Yeah.
there's gotta be a whole bunch of stuff that happens in between that. You did go on the road. Now
Yeah. Oh,
how did you? Why? I guess first question, and like, why did you get into improv? And then secondly, is like,
mm,
how did you get so good into improv to land Second City? If you were so telling your dad, I'm giving up all the money you spent on the University of Dayton to go to stand up, and now all of a sudden you're in Chicago with
right.
all these awesome, you know, improv. So just kind of walk me through going from the stand-up world to the improv world, and were they separate or did you combine the two?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. The improv all started when I went to Chicago, and Chicago really happened because that's where my dad grew up, and
Okay.
that's I still had an uncle that lived there on the south side,
Mm-hmm.
and I could stay with him and begin to work some of the clubs there. Back then, the Improv was there, and the
Mm-hmm.
Zanies was there. They had a bunch of funny bones, so there was a real scene happening in Chicago, and I got there. And when I was little, I would go to see Second City shows. I saw
Mm-hmm.
some of the big names, you know, watching them. I didn't know they were big at the time because
Mm-hmm.
they were young, and but you know they began just growing in my head, like the idea that these shows existed, and that every Friday they would all, this is when I got to see a lot of the shows because it was free. You would go in there
Mm-hmm.
after the regular show and you could watch anyone who was working in that theater come up and do improv scenes, and they
Mm-hmm.
would do it based on what we would shout out at them, and it was just
Mm-hmm.
I was fantastic. I was like, surely this has to be scripted, this is too good. And they were like,
Mm-hmm.
no, this is, there's a technique that they use where they yes and heighten, and they learn
Mm-hmm.
how to listen to each other and really create something off of a small seed, and then it grows into something through this sort of communal
Mm-hmm.
communication, yes anding with each other. And so I was really fascinated by that when I was a kid, and I sort of knew about Second City. And then when I moved to Chicago, I was like, I'm going to take the classes,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, it was a big commitment because it was a whole year of classes. You know, it's a weekly class, but you have to kind of stay in town
Mm-hmm.
as much as you can, because then your class would get together and do small shows
Mm-hmm.
and rehearsals and stuff like that. And so, and I also was doing Improv Olympic there, which is Del Close and Sharna Halpern's theater, which was right down the road from Second City. And
Mm-hmm.
Improv Olympic was a little more cutting edge. Second City was a little bit more corporate. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's also the Annoyance Theater that I took classes there. So there
Mm-hmm.
was like three different places that was teaching me how to do improv, and I wanted to do that because I realized that stand up was telling jokes. I
Mm-hmm.
was more of a scene creator. I was someone who was doing, like, my jokes came out of interactions between either two people or
Mm-hmm.
a person and a thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I wanted to get better at doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
improv was my way to figure that out.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, it's incredible. Now, to just get a class at Second City, how easy was? I mean, you're talking about the Paramount Improv, you know,
Right.
college or school, whatever you want to call it. I mean, Belushi, Moranis, Gilda Radner. I mean, all the big, all pretty much everyone from Saturday Night Live, minus John Candy, came out of Second City, you know, back in the day. So
Right.
how did you even get in there to even be
Well,
able
John,
to
yeah,
head
right. John
before?
Candy should have been on Saturday
Yeah,
Night
he was
Live,
on
but
Second City TV, I think, in
yeah,
Canada.
that was its own brilliant
Mm-hmm.
machine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Second City, great thing about Second City, that there's the entrance for just about anybody. If you
Mm-hmm.
suck and you just
Mm-hmm.
are not funny at all and you have no theater background at all,
Mm-hmm.
but you have a checking account, you can get classes there, and they'll teach you, and they'll embrace you, and
Uh-huh.
they'll treat you as if you're a potential pro, because that's how
Mhm.
Second City is. And same with
Mhm.
Improv Olympic, and same with Annoyance.
Mhm.
They're really they love the art of improv and of theater
Mhm.
itself. So they're really willing to share that with anybody. Now, if you
Mhm.
want to begin to make a living at it, that's a
Mhm.
different set of
Mhm.
classes that
Mhm.
you, and so you have to audition for their conservatory, it's called.
Mhm.
So you go in there, and you're going to be separated. You're either going to be from the group of people that are, the just the basic people that have money that can come in there and take any class, or you're going to go into the conservatory.
Mhm.
So I had to audition for that, and it was hard. I mean, you did
Mhm.
a series of scenes with people you didn't know, and
Mhm.
then it was like they had 3 or 4 or 5 directors, and the general manager of Second City, and they're all in the
Mhm.
dark in the back, kind of like a almost like a Saturday Night Live audition, but
Mhm.
with their version of it.
Mhm.
And there's no one in the audience, so no one's laughing, and so you're just working with other amateurs.
Yeah.
Just I remember doing a couple of scenes, and just creating stuff on the scene. Like
Mhm.
I don't know. I just kind of knew to start digging something. I remember in
Mhm.
one, like a scene where we were archaeologists, and I began
Mhm.
digging something and pulled out a body or something. And then I remember Kelly Leonard, the producer at the
Yeah.
time, was asked me to do some of my stand up. So I did
Oh, cool.
I was like, oh, I wasn't prepared. I didn't know what to do. Then I was like, oh, I'll do something more scenic. So
Mhm.
I did the bit. I had a bit about breaking up with someone. I said, when you live with somebody, it's a lot harder to break up with them, than if you're just dating. Because when
Mhm.
you're, especially if you have a lot of stuff, 'cause I did a whole scene about, like, like, look, this is not working out. I'm just going to get my stuff. I'm going to get out of your life. I'm going to get my dishes and plates, pack them up in boxes with newspapers. I'm going to get some change of address forms at the post office. I'm going to get this sofa. Look, we can work this out. So it's like a very quick turnaround,
Yeah.
and it killed him. It made them all laugh. And then
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, but what else do I do after that? But they cut me off right then. Once I got the big laugh, he was like, okay, I get the picture. I get the picture. I was like, so that
Awesome.
that sort of scored me the conservatory. And then I did classes for that for a year, and
Mhm.
I almost quit the conservatory because I got frustrated. I was trying to do stand up on the side. I
Mhm.
was trying to do the other stuff. It got really busy, and then I think they were trying to do a repeat of the same teacher again, and I didn't want the same teacher. And then someone pulled me aside, and it's like, dude, they're gonna hire you. I've heard they're gonna hire you, so just stick it out. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, well, that's different. So then I just so then after you do the conservatory, then everybody auditions again, and then you have this whole
Jeez.
audition process
Okay.
to be in the tour company. And there's 3 touring companies: green, blue, and red. And
Mhm.
so and each one has, I think, six members in it. So
Mhm.
there's what's that, 18 spots that you're going
Mhm.
for, and most of those spots are already filled. And then there's understudies.
Mhm.
So I ended up auditioning for that, and I ended up getting a spot in Greenco.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
because
with
it wasn't until I was doing research on you, Mike, that I realized that Second City even toured, because that's how you end up in Vegas, right? You were touring in Vegas and you found
No,
all the.
no, Vegas
Oh,
was a different deal. Yeah, Vegas, but
okay.
Vegas was a different deal. The touring was, you would go in a van with your troupe, and
Hmm.
a musician, and I guess you'd call her a producer, and
Hmm.
they were the road producer, and they'd put everything together,
Hmm.
and keep track of all the details, and know where your hotel is and all that.
Hmm.
And it was fun. One of my John Farley was one of my castmates, and
Okay.
Craig Kukowski was one of my
Wow.
castmates. So we had a lot of fun. It was us 3 guys, and then three
Nice.
three women. We had a lot of craziness, but it was low paid, because a lot of people want to do it. So it was
Yeah.
like I took a huge pay cut from doing stand up, and it was killing me, but I was like, I
Yeah.
got to do this. And so I toured with them for like a year. We went to Europe. We went to all over the US, and it was fantastic. I learned so much being with those people and being with that group. Mainly that I don't work well with people. That's what I learned the
Well, I
most.
was just about to ask that because you were saying how well you were like as a scene setter, like you're doing the conversations. Would you say that your Asperger's actually was a positive here because where you were seeing something maybe differently than the normal human is, you're reading interactions way differently than maybe I don't want to say normal person, but like the average person would. Do you think that the Asperger's
Yeah.
actually helped make you
Ah.
funnier by just making the scene little off tilter a little bit for the
That might,
for
it might be why, yeah. That
the
might be why it was so outside the box. It's like, dude, you're wired so differently. Well, yeah, that's a good way to look at it, because how
Hmm.
I always look at it is it was very difficult. Like the Asperger's, you tend to isolate a lot, because people
Hmm.
are challenging, noises. You're very sensitive to noises, sounds, ticks, things that
Hmm.
people do. You hear and you notice everything. Anything that's off kilter a little bit, you notice it. So if anyone's
Hmm.
not doing things right, you notice it,
Hmm.
and it takes everything to not mention it, because that's
Hmm.
part of the compulsion.
Hmm.
And this is for me though. Like other people with Asperger's are totally different. Like they say,
Hmm.
once you meet one person with Asperger's, you've met one person with Asperger's. Because that's it. Because everyone's really
I like
different. So
that.
I don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't pretend to speak for anyone else who's on
Yeah.
any of the spectrums, but I know this is my experience. And to me, it was really, it made it a challenge to be with
Hmm.
other people, because I preferred to be alone, but I couldn't do this thing alone. So that
Yeah.
was a constant battle for sure.
So
But
did you
yeah, it
prefer?
made me think outside the
Sorry.
box for sure.
Yeah. Did you prefer the world stand up then because it's so isolating? Did you? You probably thought. Did you prefer stand up versus improv?
No, I love them both. I
Okay.
would do stand up for a while and I would love it, and I would miss improv. So I go
Hmm.
back and do improv for a while and I miss it, and I go back and do stand up. And then I ended up eventually doing improv at the end of my stand up show
Oh,
with the
nice.
other comics if they were willing to, and we
Okay.
would do some basic games that we would do for the crowd, and would
That's
kill
cool.
because they
Yeah.
already knew who we were, and then we would go up there and improvise. And if they were at all good at it, and then
Hmm.
sometimes we would even involve the crowd. We would let the
Hmm.
crowd come up and do it with us. So it was very entertaining.
What from your years of experience did you end up including in your book? Because that's a unique lens. I mean, you always hear about like that comedy Bible, and I don't know who wrote that, but but like as
Oh,
far, I
Judy
mean,
Carter, yeah.
yeah, but like she's straight stand up.
Yeah.
You dabbles as a high performer in both fields. So what from the
Yeah,
improv lens did you bring into the book to make it stand
that's
out
a
more?
that's an excellent question, Mark. The what I'll tell you what I brought. I brought in yes anding and
Hmm.
heightening. Now,
Okay.
yes anding, just for anyone not that doesn't know, it's a way that two people in a scene can help the scene grow.
Hmm.
If two people don't agree with each other, it goes nowhere. Because
Hmm.
you could go into a scene and say, I'm ready for a beer, another
Hmm.
beer. And
Hmm.
someone else go, well, that's apple juice. What do you mean? Or someone else
Hmm.
could say, you're a kid. Kids don't drink. And right away you're
Yeah.
like, well, okay, then what do you want the scene to be about then? Well, as opposed to yes anding, where you go, I'm ready for a beer. I'm ready for another beer too, and then we're gonna drive this rest of the trip. And then
Hmm.
now we've yes anded. Now we're both drinking, and now
Hmm.
and then you begin to heighten, and heighten means you take whatever the idea is and you begin to pile onto it.
Hmm.
Comics are really good at heightening. It's called ball busting. It's called roasting.
Hmm.
How blank is it is a real heightening game, and you begin to, if you watch comics roast each other,
Hmm.
you can see that one guy will start off, and I give examples of that in the book.
Hmm.
One guy will start off busting balls, and then everyone else will jump on it playing that same game,
Hmm.
so I feel like those are two real improv oriented skills that I bring to the book that help in joke writing, because when you're writing a joke, you need to begin to heighten. Once you set something up and
Hmm.
then you twist it, the way you get laughs is you have to heighten that twist. You have to begin to say, how blank is that thing, whatever
Hmm.
that thing is that you've set up. And then there's different ways to do that. You can do a different perspective, from someone else's point of view. You
Hmm.
could do a callback from a thing you've already done. You can do a cut forward to, where you create a moment that this thing that you're
Hmm.
talking about creates, or you can do a cut back to where it's something that led to this moment. And so there's all these different flexes that you can begin to do with these heightening devices that begin to create your laughs, and those
Hmm.
flexes are from heightening and yes anding the whole idea that you've set up for yourself. So there, yeah, definitely there's improv concepts within the book.
It's very cool. Who would you say is a great yes ander in the stand up world?
Oh my God. I mean, anyone who's is a good stand-up is a good
Hmm.
yes-ander, because that's why we like him. Jerry Seinfeld is a wonderful
Hmm.
yes-ander. I mean, the whole show is built up on yes-anding. This irrelevant thing
Hmm.
is important. Yes, it is. And here's how important it is. And here's how more important it is. And all of a sudden, every character in that show piles on to the unimportance. And so now all of a sudden
Yeah.
this unimportant, it has a name, it has a title, there might be a product that now is built around it. And
Yeah.
you know, the soup Nazi, you know,
Yeah.
it goes from a guy who's a rude soup guy to now he's got a title, you know. So there's definitely yes ending in that. You know, like any
I was thinking Anthony Jeselnik, I feel like
I
he
like
tries
him,
to one up how dark he is on every joke. He
right?
tries to get, I don't know if you follow it, but I was just thinking about
I
when you're
like
talking
him.
about how does he keep at, like, okay, he opens the door and then it gets even darker. So it's
Yeah.
a cool move. I think that's kind of special that you include that in your book. Now, so kind of walk me through, you are successful road comic, you're in Second City. What would you say your life is like at this point? Would you say like, I mean, you said that Second City wasn't paying well, the tour, but you had the fame and notoriety of adding Second City to your resume, and people,
Sure.
was your life, knowing that you are out of the world of stand up now, what would, do you miss that part of your life? I mean, what kind of walk me through what life
Well,
was
yeah,
like as
sure.
as a stand up slash improviser in the
Sure.
80s 90s, successful
That
at
like
that.
yeah, well, I didn't 80s I was in college and
I'm sorry, 90s.
yeah, it was 90s and the aughts. The aughts up until 2014. The life was it was hectic. It was
Hmm.
like here's what like when you said that about your sister's funny, but she never wanted to be a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
And Steve Martin says, you know, stand-up comedy is a young man's game. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of references to stand-up comedy, not being a joke teller, but
Hmm.
being a joke teller for a living. There's a
Hmm.
lifestyle that goes along with that.
Hmm.
You're never at the same place every week. You have a new home every week. So wherever your home is, it's a launching base. So you
Hmm.
don't get to be there very often. You're working at night, so your entire body clock is geared to
Hmm.
be peaking at between the hours of 8 and midnight,
Hmm.
and then you're coming down from that afterward. So either, you know, some people use alcohol, some people use other methods to bring themselves down from the excitement of the show, but really you
Hmm.
can't get to bed till sometimes 3 or 4 in the morning. So
Hmm.
your whole day shifts differently. You're
Hmm.
traveling a lot more, so
Hmm.
there's the hassles of traveling. So you're having to deal with, you know, not just being in a different place, but getting to different places. And
Hmm.
initially you do it in a car, and then eventually you're on a plane trips. And so then
Hmm.
it's, oh, once I get flying, it's going to be so much better. But then the airports have all their own hassles, and
Hmm.
now you're trying to get to first class, but you're not. So you know, you're shoved in the back of a plane, and you're just like, okay, this is how I got to get there. This is okay.
Hmm.
It's better than driving. And so there's all sorts of factors that go into that lifestyle.
Hmm.
What ended up doing it for me, where I wanted to retire, was not the lifestyle itself. It was being away from, I had two babies, and so,
Hmm.
and a wife, and so now I had this family home that I had to
Hmm.
leave. Before, I didn't have to
Hmm.
leave any, I didn't even have any pets. I just would just, it was like, you know, goodbye bed, goodbye alarm clock, I'll see you when I
Yeah.
get back. In the meantime, there'll be others. But with the wife and kids, like,
Yeah.
I was like I did the joke. I was like, you come home and it's like, kids, it's me, Daddy. Remind us, you know, you are. Ah,
So what?
I'm
So,
in all the pictures. Look on the wall.
well, I mean, like a normal year, how many weekends of a 52-week year were you
Oh,
away?
I was working. I worked every week I could. So it was rare that I didn't work a week. So
Okay.
a lot of times what you would do is you string together 3 or 4 weeks that are in the same region, and then you're
Hmm.
away for those 3 or 4 weeks, and then you kind of come home,
Hmm.
do your laundry, pay bills,
Hmm.
pay your apartment rent that you didn't
Hmm.
use, and then you would pack back up and get back up again.
Hmm.
When you begin to fly, it was a little bit better, because then you could fly like on a Tuesday and get to
Hmm.
the gig, do a Tuesday through Saturday gig or a Sunday gig, and then fly back on Sunday or Monday, and then have 1 or 2 days in between that you would do that same thing, and then you'd get back in and fly again. So it was just back and
Hmm.
forth over and over again. So it,
Yeah.
it it's a rough lifestyle. But if
Yeah.
you're single, or if you're with your partner, and you're traveling
Hmm.
with your partner, it's a great way to see the world or the
Yeah.
country and all that.
Were you getting paid well at least, or was it always just like I
Yeah,
was away all the time? You were getting paid well. Okay, nice,
yeah.
Very
I was
cool.
making $5 an hour, but I was working 24 hours a day. So you do the math, Mark. You
So
do the math.
my
No,
question for you
I can
then,
tell you what I was making. I
yeah.
at the time I was I think I was getting somewhere like maybe $1,500 to $2,000 a week.
Mm,
And then when I began doing the Tonight shows
hmm
and getting the Conan O'Brien stuff and
hmm
the festivals and the
hmm
Second City, I started going up like between $2,000 and $2,500 a week. And
Oh
then
wow.
you sometimes you could piece together 2 or 3 things, and then
Hmm
in a month you're making $7,500. And this is 1990s money, Mark.
Yeah.
So that milk was, I think milk was a nickel.
But my 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 question is, were you able to spend that money though? So you're making a lot of money, but were you
Oh
able to
yeah, I
spend it?
spent that
Okay. Oh,
money.
you were okay.
I don't have a dime of it. I don't have a dime of it. Not even a literal dime. Like this is one of the dimes from when I worked it back then.
We're getting completely off tangent here, but I'm just always fascinated. So I do stand up, but I am not in a position where I'm like you, where people are like inviting me out to every part of the country to perform. I always want to know, what is your most horrific comedy condo story?
Oh my God. Let's see. Oh my God, there's so many of them. I have a lot of condo stories. I remember like some of them are they're just awful. Like
I just want the
they're
worst
they're
one.
awful in the sense that, well, it's like being invited to a relative's house that doesn't do laundry, that doesn't do clean, and
Hmm
the big fear is if there's any condiments in the fridge that are left over from the previous week, you don't use any of them ever since, you've heard the stories of comedians putting their bodily fluids of some level in the mayonnaise or the mustard. And so as a joke, ha ha ha, you guys have a sandwich last night? Ah. I remember one story. I remember I brought a waitress back with me
Mhm,
to this is when I was single,
mhm.
in the beginning,
Yeah.
and I brought a waitress back to a condo in Michigan, and this place was horrible. And I remember there was a middle room, an opener's room, and a headliner's room. I think the opener was like in the back porch, and then the headliner's room was up front, and then the middle room was off the kitchen. And so had a drink or whatever, and then I was trying to get her to come back to the bedroom, and I brought her to the headliner's room, and she was like, "Oh, you're in that room. You're so lucky. That room over there is so cold." I was like, "How do you know?" I was like, "Oh, you were with the middle? Oh, like, no, no, no."
That's
So
hilarious.
yeah, there's so many
It's so funny.
right, and there's so many bad, because even the
Yeah.
best condo, you're in a like
hmm
somebody's rental house with furniture that is old
hmm
and is secondhand. And you're a comedian, so you want to be in a hotel and want to feel like you're a pro, but
Yeah.
instead you're in this frat house basically. And there's the other comics, and I love, and that's what's funny is when you're in a condo with other
hmm
comedians, you can tell very quickly whether or not you're going to get along, because either the comedians all sit in the middle room and
hmm
talk, and
hmm
or everyone's in their room and no one's and pretty much by day 2 you're like, it's going to be one of those weeks. See you at the show.
Finding your
There's
funny
3 books.
muscle is where you it's part one of 3 books that you plan on
Yeah.
writing. Do you plan on
Yeah.
writing about the business at all, the business of comedy in those 3 books? To kind of
Yeah.
help, it sounds like you always
Yeah.
come from the approach of helping that young budding
Sure.
comic who's sitting in that cubicle, possibly at AT&T still, and getting them on the road kind of deal. Does
Get
the business of
away. Run.
does the business of comedy come into any of those books at all?
It does a little bit. Not really on how to be like that, like how the business part of how to run a comedy career.
Mm-hmm.
But I do talk about in the first book, Finding Your Funny Muscle.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about some of the experiences I had working at Second City in Vegas. I talk about doing the road. One
Mm-hmm.
of the stories I tell in the first book is the first Tonight Show experience I had, and I walk you through what it's like to get ready, like to audition for a thing, get it, and
Mm-hmm.
then prepare for the set, and then do the set. So that's in
Mm-hmm.
there. And the second book is called Fine Tuning Your Funny Muscle, and that's where I go over like sort of above the net
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, insights on all of this. And in that one, I tell the story of my second Tonight Show set, which didn't go as well because of all the I call them the mind f's that are there. And that set was challenging because I got bumped the first time. I was trying to come up with material and I didn't have any material, so I was trying to create this this concoction, this Frankenstein of material from my comedy quippers graveyard, for using
Yeah.
body parts from that. And it was challenging because I sent in a set and they rejected it. The first set,
Mhm.
the follow-up set, I said nope, try again. So I was like, oh my god, I'm probably not going to get a third chance. So I knew I had to put
Mhm.
that together. When I did get the set, I got bumped. So
Mhm.
I'd never been bumped before. So then
Yeah.
I had to come back the next night, and I got a migraine the
Mhm.
next morning. So I had
Oh
this
no.
splitting headache with this aura that I
Yeah.
couldn't see. So I smoked some weed, and so I was residually high, and so that drew some energy from me. So there's all, and then I was with somebody instead. Like the first one, I had a friend with me who was all upbeat and got me to
Mhm.
forget about what I was about to do. The second one I was with, I call him Glum Glenn. I won't tell anybody who it was, but Glum Glenn was about to quit the whole industry. So he was
Mhm.
this depressing sort of energy, and that put me in my head about what I was
Mhm.
about to do. Then during the set when I was doing it, this is all in the second book,
Mhm.
there was a guy in the audience of the Tonight Show with an air horn. He had snuck in an air horn,
Oh my
and he was
God.
blowing that off during my set. For I don't know why he was. I mean, he wasn't a heckler. He was just being funny. But so that was something I had to deal with. So there was all these things that
Yeah.
happened that made this second. And then I began to realize that I didn't have a good comedy lens. And so
Mhm.
even as funny as I wasn't memorable. And that's the
Mhm.
thing about a comedy lens that I wanted that I stress in this book series. And then the third
Mhm.
book is Flexing Your Funny Muscle, where that's where I give examples of where and how to flex this system, this game plan, whether you want to be a comedian, whether or not you're just trying to be funny with your friends and family, whether you
Mhm.
have a speech you're preparing for, whether you're a business person and you want to be funnier with your presentations.
Mhm.
That's and also on how to handle hecklers. That's a big thing that is in the third book, is how to flex that when someone's not into what you're doing. I used to
What is
love
your
heckling.
advice for handling a heckler? I don't want to ruin the whole book, but like what is
No,
your what is
well,
the best practice, especially for someone who's new, which is your audience for
yeah.
the first book? What would you say someone, well, I'm not gonna spoil what you're talking about with the heckler, but for somebody who
Ooh,
sees this and wants to buy your book and they want to know,
yeah.
like, hey, I'm starting out and I'm very scared, and someone starts to, and I would say the most common heckle is not someone saying you suck, it's that they trying to add on to what the
Right.
comic's saying. So what would be a best practice, something like that?
It's tough in the beginning. Hecklers are a real challenge. Like I gotta say,
Mm-hmm.
like figuring out how you handle people that don't like you is
Mm-hmm.
the worst for any of us comedians, because the comedian, our job is to get people to like us. So
Mm-hmm.
99 people could like me, and if one guy doesn't, that's who I'm focused on. I'm like, what
Mm-hmm.
happened? What could I have done better? Like
Mm-hmm.
what did you want to hear?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you shouldn't be that way. Like you should
Mm-hmm.
just focus on the 99 and swipe left on the other people. But sometimes they pipe in. And
Mm-hmm.
I've always, like, what I learned when I was a comedian, the first thing I learned from other comics was the "you suck, you swallow"
Mm-hmm.
tactic. Where you try to one up them on heckles, and so you're basically heckling the heckler back. And I
Okay.
realized very quickly I'm not good at that game. And the heckler is drunk, and the heckler has sort of an advantage if you go tit for tat. So I
Mm-hmm.
realized very quickly that's not the way it works. So
Mm-hmm.
as an improviser, I began to realize I had to be a better listener. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't. What I would recommend to anyone who's a comedian: don't listen to what the heckler says. Listen to all the other levels. Why do they say it? How
Mm-hmm.
did they say it? When in the act did they say it? Where are they saying it from? Who are they in saying it? What do they look like in saying it? Where were they coming from? So I begin to tackle it from that level.
Yeah,
So that
you're like analyze the heckler. Kind of you're doing a
right.
very quick
Very,
analysis of the
and
heckler.
as exactly, and so you begin to put them on the spot. You give them more attention than they ever bargained for, and it's not the kind of attention they want. They want a tit for tat kind of
Mm-hmm.
attention. I give them different kind of attention. I remember one famous heckler move that happened that became a piece that I used over and over again. I
Mm-hmm.
walked out, and it was a theater I was doing. There was probably like, I don't know, 5,000 people in the audience. I was
Mm-hmm.
opening for can't remember who it was. There was three of us, and I was in the middle, and I came out to do a 25-minute set, and within 2 seconds, someone yells out, "Buff your head for a nickel." And so it got a big laugh. Buff your head for a nickel. And I was like, okay. So now I can tit for tat with this guy
Uh-huh.
and like look at him and try to mock
Mm-hmm.
him. But instead I was like, have you ever heard the bit like it's an old Heckler handle where you say, well, I don't go where you work and knock the dicks out of you
Yeah.
in my restaurants.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah,
Okay.
there's nothing here.
So that's an old like that's a very old standard stock sort of way to
Yeah.
handle a heckler.
Hmm.
So I did my version of that. So I worked up to it first. I was like, buff your head for a nickel. And I was like, oh, you're the buff your head for a nickel guy. Well, welcome to the show. This guy is going to be after the show, he's going to be wanting attention. He's going to be by the door. Oh, I was the buff your head for a nickel guy. How you doing? Nice to meet you. That was me right off the bat. I noticed he had a bald head and I noticed it. And I was like, what could I say that would bring attention to that? Because no one else is noticing this kind of thing. So I would just start to be this guy. And then I would have him shaking hands, signing autographs after the show. Buff your head for a nickel. How do you spell nickel? It don't matter. Nick, N-I-K-E-L. That's N-I-K-L-E. You're right. You're right. And so then I had him, and then I had him on the drive home with his girlfriend. Then I'd be like, remember when I was part of the show, honey? That was something else, wasn't it? Buff your head for a nickel. No one else was saying nothing, but there I was saying stuff to the guy. Oh, that was so fun. And then I had his girlfriend like, say it again. All right, buff your head for a nickel. And then I had them making out and crash the car. And then the piece de resistance was I had him, I go, and then this guy is going to be at work the next day. And he's going to be, bragging to his coworkers. And then I had him mopping the floor going, you should have seen me last night at the comedy club. Oh, buff your head for a nickel, I says to the guy. He didn't know what to do. It threw him off completely. And then I have him like cleaning the mop, with the stick. Yeah. And then, I have him, and then basically he's cleaning toilets. And so
you have Mike, I've noticed about you, and now it comes back to your act. And I want to know maybe that it's something, it's definitely an advantage that you have, and maybe if you can kind of touch on how your book talks about is just even the heckle. You had this ability to really, as I think this is not my words, like really grab all the meat off the bone. You like can make a bit, and it's not like you're making it too long. But I don't know, it's like that. I don't know if you're even yes-anding yourself here.
Yes.
But it's like you keep trying to like, all right, I'm gonna go to the next one. Like, in the book that you have, and maybe it's on the yes and section. What is your advice to somebody to kind of do what you just did? Where now you have this whole monologue, again with a character who, I mean, the character gets as a heckler who said one thing, but now you gave, I mean, just then it was like what, 2 minutes of just a really great bit. So what is your advice?
And it lasts a lot longer. I swear. I can milk it, Mark.
But what is your advice? I mean, but what is your advice around, like, I mean, milking? I mean, not milking it until it dies of laughs, but like, I guess like how to really get all the fat off the bone, but then not going too much into it. What is your advice to that?
It's funny because the bit I used to do about milking it, he's milking it. The comedy cow says, move on. Well, yeah. The thing that I do in the book, I have those 36 humor heightening devices. And so what that gives you, see, I think what a lot of comedians don't realize is like, they don't have that set of devices at their disposal. They use them sort of accidentally, organically, but they don't consciously go through a set of 36 of them. I mean, you don't always have to go through all 36. So the thing that I see so many of the newer comics do is they punch and move. So they're doing one punchline to a setup, and then they move on to the next setup. And there's certain styles, like Jerry Seinfeld does that a lot. Rodney Dangerfield does that a lot. But then, but that's a style of a joke. That's a Mitch Hedberg did that a lot, where it's just one-liners and then you move on. But most comedians, it's going to be far more interesting if you explore something, a topic, to its completeness. And that's what I teach with these 36 humor heightening devices. When you begin to apply all these different devices one after the other, you get different parts of the bone, so to speak, different meat off the bone. And then you can begin to like that process gives you sort of a pile of possible punchlines that you can choose from. And then from that, you can begin to construct them together to be a little bit of a story. And in the book, I take one of the comedians I'm working with, her name's Kathy. She had this idea. She was like, she has a teen son. Part of her comedy lens is that she's a mother. Her teen son thinks she's an idiot. Like no matter what she does, that's part of her lens. And her son was asking her about sex, when and he's 15 or whatever. He's like, when,
Mhm.
and she was like, I want to be honest with them. And
Mhm.
and she sent me an email and said, what about this topic? So in the book, I
Mhm.
say, well, okay, well, here's an idea.
Mhm.
Let's take that idea, apply it to the humor blueprint, and then see what we come out of it. And so we came out with a bunch of different punchlines from using those heightening devices on it. And she was going to just do the one thing and then move on, but
Yeah.
instead there's like 6 different jokes that we have about, when is the right time to have sex. It's like
Mhm.
when a couple really wants to begin fighting. Like,
Yeah.
that's funny. When does a couple have sex? Oh, usually about halfway through the movie. Whatever. But there's all these different punchlines
Yeah.
where, and then you can be so if you have a different humor heightening device that looks at it from a different angle, or that
Mhm.
cuts back or moves forward, or like I said, there's 36 of them. So there's
Yeah.
36 different ways, using sound effects, using voice impersonations, using
Mhm.
anthropomorphizing. There's all these different ways that you can find that meat off the bone, and
Okay.
then the job of the good comic is to take the best of those, piece those together in an act that's deliverable,
Okay. Yeah.
which
That
I
was
show how to
well
do.
said.
I actually do that with her bit. I go from the email to the pile of
Oh,
punchlines
pretty
to
cool.
here is the act, and that's in the book too. That's in the first book.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, so let's talk about being an author now that you are been one. Now your book is self-published, and that is awesome. And I think I want to talk about that because I know a lot of people who have written something and they spend gross amounts of their own time to find someone to help them publish. They'll enter contests or whatever. They spend all this time trying to get somebody to publish it. Can you demystify the stigma of self-publishing? Because I think there's a lot of merit and value in it. Can you just kind of talk about self-publishing and what it has done for you and what it will do for
Sure.
you?
Well, yeah, and the reason why I chose to self-publish this book, there's a bunch of reasons why. I have 2 of my family members are also authors, and they've gone through the regular literary route, and I saw the backside of what that looks like, and back when they did their books, it was impossible to self-publish. There wasn't all the things set up that for an author that there are now.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed is, number one, that they made very little money after their initial whatever money they got up front. They didn't make much money after that, and they were sort of trapped in this world of the publisher is going to do all the work, and I just sit back and wait for the books to sell
Mm-hmm.
and cash my checks. And it just doesn't work that way anymore. There's
Mm-hmm.
too many books and too many
Mm-hmm.
authors and too much for people to choose from. So
Mm-hmm.
now that self-publishing, what I began to learn about self-publishing is you're basically in charge of everything that the publisher does, but now it's up to you to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hire the same people that the publisher does to do
Mm-hmm.
the same level of work, but you have to be willing to put some investment up front. That's why you pay a publisher typically, is because they put that money up front. They
Mm-hmm.
hire a book cover artist. You have
Mm-hmm.
to have someone who do it professionally. They hire an editor. You have to have your book professionally edited.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a quick story. I had mine professionally edited, and I handed it to him as best as I could do it. It was
Mm-hmm.
my book's like 240 pages long, so I gave him that with to me no errors in exactly how I wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Handed it back to me and said, "It's perfect." I'm kidding. He handed it back. He said, I made 4,200 changes. I'm not kidding. 4,200 things wrong that I did. As an ass behold, you understand how painful it was to hear that there were 4,200 times that I did the wrong thing. So I had to
but
go
do,
back through and
but do you
and
take all 4,200 or do you have a back and
just
forth? I'm like,
about.
no, this is important to me. Oh, you do take all 40.
No, just
Okay.
about, because there are things that like where you've repeated yourself that you don't realize you've done that. There
Mm-hmm.
are ways that you phrase things that could be phrased better. There are grammatical errors that you didn't understand, typographical errors. It could be the littlest punctuation error that you didn't understand, where a comma went somewhere that you
Mm-hmm.
need to put it that you didn't. But there were 4,200 of them, and I took probably about 4,000 of them, and they were correct. Now a bunch of them I was like, no, I like how this is. There's a reason why I did
Mm-hmm.
it this way, and he even said, unless you did it for a reason, and then so, but then the third thing that you have to hire someone to do is to do your interior, to set up the inside of the book,
Mm-hmm.
you can't just copy and paste from a Word doc and put it on there and think it's going to look like a book. If you
Mm-hmm.
want it to look like a book. And so I'm saying all this to tell you that people in the beginning self-published their books and didn't hire those 3 people. They did it themselves, and the results were obvious. It looked like a homemade book. It looked like somebody just put it together at Kinko's. And that is fine if you're just trying to give it to your family and friends and you just want it as a record of what you did. If you're trying to really sell it in the book market and compete with professional books, you have to hire those 3 people. Now, I did that for my book, and I like the results are like uncanny. I mean, like just the inside of the book looks gorgeous. I mean, and I couldn't have done it. They use different size fonts. I didn't know that. Sometimes they make it darker, sometimes it's lighter. I didn't know that either. Just things you're just like, oh my God, it looks gorgeous. And even like the cover. Like the cover is so that's the sales pitch. That's the business card that you're showing everybody. You want them to look at the cover and go, what's that? And then turn
Very
the book
important.
over and read the back.
Yeah.
So they understand so there's a real art to it. So long story short, I guess is the reason why I love self-publishing is because I control all those factors and I get to make more money. So when I also, one of the jobs I had while I was as a writer, as a copywriter, I was working with a friend of mine at a place called Copy Chief. And I learned for about 5, maybe 4 years, how to market. And so direct marketing is this thing where you're building an email list, you're having landing pages, you're advertising to get to the landing pages, you're warming up cold traffic, you're figuring out ways, because no one's going to open up their credit card to someone they don't know. So you're trying to develop what they call KLT, your know, like, and trust. And in order to do that, you need to give people value. And so that's what I learned through Copy Chief, and this guy Kevin Rogers, who runs that. He's an old comic who turned his career around into being a copywriter.
Oh, nice. I'm sorry. Is Copy Chief, is that like a class, or what is Copy Chief?
Copy Chief is like sort of I guess you call it like a club, a group, it's a site and you belong to it. So I don't know what you call those.
Like kind of like Squarespace, kind of. It kind of makes it.
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
And so you have a membership
templates
there, and then you get content from that. You get
nice.
A lot of benefits to being in that, and you get a lot of classes and stuff like that. And so I was always trying to figure out, like, what can I sell using this knowledge I have about direct marketing? And so I was like, oh, well, then this book came up, and so it all came on together. So now I'm using all the things I learned as a copywriter and as a direct marketer to push my book out, which is another thing that you want the publisher to do, but they won't do that anymore. It's up to you. You have to build up your own social media presence. You have to begin to create valuable content for people to draw them into your world. For instance, my funnymuscle.com site, I have video blogs and audio blogs. All my written blogs have audio, so you can listen to the written word. And I've drawn almost 24,000 visits to my site since I launched it on March 9th. So that's 24,000 people coming in and laughing for free at my stuff. But the big thing that's there is, here's my book.
Yeah.
The book.
So how do you get people just to listen? Are you telling you're using Copy Chief, or are you doing things like podcasting and that kind? Like, how do you get 24,000 people?
Right. I'm using Twitter and I'm using Facebook. I have I have a couple thousand followers on Twitter, and I have 5,000 followers on Facebook. And so what I do is I use in SEO, search engine optimization is key. We're in the age of the algorithm, and so the internet algorithm its job is simply to answer people's Google questions. And so you have to figure out how to be the answer to people's Google questions. You have to figure out what questions are they asking where I'm the answer. And so then you use hashtags and you use different links they're called crawlers. The algorithm has these crawlers that go all into all these different sites, and they're trying to figure out where's the best answer for these questions. And if you're one of them, they tag you, and then they begin to use you more often. So there's all this knowledge that you sort of have to sort of begin to get excitement around your book.
Very cool.
And it's not easy because it's a lot of moving parts. And so it's easier to just hand it to someone and go, here, you do it all.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think
they don't.
I think like what and I'll see if you agree or not. I think like the book industry is very similar to what the comedy industry is which like before the old way of going about getting recognized as a comedian was you had to have an HBO special and you had to be on Netflix and even like Tonight Show was like a huge credit. But now comics, I mean, one of them come from our area, Shane Gillis, out of Philadelphia,
Oh, Shane.
has he has 11 million views on his YouTube. I mean, that's how he launched his career. So I think would you say like but the book industry is kind of following parallel to the stand-up industry where they're cutting out the middleman. It's going like, hey, we're self doing like there's a new world now. We don't need the
Sure.
middleman to help us. We're upskilling and we're doing our own thing and getting it out, getting the word out about our own work and our own creativity.
Absolutely. And
Nice.
throw the music industry in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Prince, the
Yeah.
artist formerly known as,
Yeah.
I say I want to be the Prince of self-publishing because I want to avoid that middleman, because there's all those middlemen and gatekeepers
Yeah.
that are trying to prevent I guess the masses
Mm-hmm.
from taking advantage of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does, in a way it keeps out all the
Yeah.
riffraff, it keeps out the people that are less talented.
Yeah.
But what it also does is it ignores quite a few of the talented people because they don't
Mm-hmm.
know the right people, or they didn't put it in the right hands,
Yeah.
or the guy was having a bad day and he just flipped through it.
Mm-hmm.
And, but yeah, the book industry, the comedy industry, the music industry, they're
Mm-hmm.
all beginning to have that same element, is what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
where you can begin to do it yourself if you understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to
Yeah.
attract people to come to see what you're doing
Mm-hmm.
for free so that you
Mm-hmm.
can sell them something once they get who you are.
Yeah. No, I mean, your book, I mean, this book is, you think about, I think the old school self-publishing is like, oh, it's going to be available on Amazon, but your copy is available on Walmart, Target, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, anywhere
Yeah.
anyone can get a book, you're going to find your book there.
Yeah.
How did you break that barrier? Because I would say, a lot of the comics who have had a book who I've had on this show sell it just exclusively through Amazon. They have not been able to, but you somehow have found a way to break into which is very hard because physical bookstores don't really exist too much anymore. How have you been able to create demand in order to get copies into those brick and mortar stores?
Well, so far I haven't done anything. But the book isn't coming out till May 15th.
That's what I
So
meant when it comes out
yeah,
May
yeah, yeah,
15th.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But there's ways to get it. Like Barnes and Noble is
Mhm.
you can get through Barnes and Noble. But you have to you go through their site.
Okay.
There's you have to have all your files in order. You have to
Mhm.
upload those. Then you have to create an account. You have to have what's called an ISBN number, which is the
Mhm.
sort of the number that keeps track of the book and
Mhm.
tells bookstores and libraries and the internet whose book this is, how much it costs, and how to
Mhm.
get it. And then each different site has those avenues to get into them. Now,
Mhm.
like Walmart and Target and those books, those work with Amazon. So
Mhm.
you have on Amazon, it's called KDP,
Mhm.
Kindle Direct Publishing. KDP has something called extended, what is it called? Extended reach,
Mhm.
something like that. And so what you can do is you can sign up for that, and you can they'll put them on those bookshelves. Now, what
Nice.
happens though is you make less money when you do that, which is why a
Yeah.
lot of guys don't do that, is because what they're doing now is called print on demand. In the old days, what they
Mhm.
would do is they would print 200, 500, 1,000 books, and you'd have
Mhm.
boxes of them, and then you'd have to sell each book. And if you
Mhm.
didn't sell them all, you're stuck with a box of books, and no one wants that. Now what they do is my book, you order it and it prints up that book for you, and it costs, I don't know, like $350 to do that. So they take that out of the cost of the book. I'm selling my book for $14.99. The
Mhm.
hard book, the paperback, I mean.
Mhm.
So the paperback is $14.99. $350 of that goes right to the printing. And then I get
Mhm.
60% of whatever's left of that. And
Okay.
that's how I make my money.
Nice.
Now the ebooks are $7.99.
Mhm.
So there's no print up of that. So then I make more money off of those,
Yeah.
like $350 or something,
Audiobook?
off the audio. And now I'm going to do an audio book as well.
Okay, nice.
But I'm going to be recording my own audio stuff, and then I'm going to begin to distribute that to the different audio channels.
I would love
That's the
to
next thing,
I would love to talk to you after you do the audiobook. I listen to audio all the time, audiobooks
right?
all the time. And it's like I always wondered why you listen to like a fiction book, and it's like usually like a crime thriller, and they have like the same person playing male and female part. Like, why couldn't they just hire two people? I gotta sit with you after you do one of these and just figure out the exhaustion. It's gotta be exhausting to
Yeah.
record an audiobook. So I gotta talk to you after this. But um I don't want to. I know it gets you here so long, Mike, but I've had
Oh,
the pleasure of
I
talking.
love it, man. Yeah. Oh, I get to talk about me. Oh, Marc, this is painful. This is so
Well,
painful.
I want to touch on a few things about like just like, hey, now you're in the family man, that kind of thing. But the last thing I think is like, not that I am writing a book, but for people who, I mean, my audience is mostly comics, which and up and coming
Yeah.
comics, which I think is great for your book. But would be like, hey, for those who want to pursue self-publishing, getting your own book, and they have something, maybe like a manuscript that or something. I don't know if they call it manuscript. I don't know what it's what would
Sure.
be the first what would be the first two steps that they would take to follow like in your path there? What would be the first if you had to give
Okay.
advice to get
Hmm.
something to where finding your funny muscle is going to be on March 15th? What would you say the first two steps are to take if they
Well,
have something already done?
sure. Well, the first, if you have a manuscript, that means that
Mm-hmm.
you've already looked at it, you've probably edited it
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and if you're prepared, like if you think that this thing is ready to go,
Mm-hmm.
there's two things you would do first. Well, the first thing you
Mm-hmm.
would do is hire an editor.
Mm-hmm.
An editor, it depends on how long your manuscript is, but usually an editor can
Where can
cost you.
you find one? Where can you find? Just
Okay.
Google, find it on, find an editor. I don't know what do
Well,
you.
where I went, there's a site called Reedsy, Reedsy, and
Okay.
Reedsy is like they're like the self-publisher pimp, right? So Breezy's sitting on the corner. He's like, "Hey, what do you need, man? What do you need? I got it for you. You need a book artist, a cover. Oh, I got you, man. I got you, man. Just I'll give you a little taste, and you tell me if you like it." And I won't keep that metaphor going, but they have book artists, book cover artists. They've got
Mhm.
editors. They've got internal graphic artists. They've got marketers, and
Mhm.
what they do is they vet all this talent, and then
Mhm.
they take a 10% cut. So
Mhm.
you have to pay them a little bit of money in order to find a talented person. And so what you can do on Reedsy is you can say, here's the manuscript I have,
Mhm.
and you talk to 5 book cover artists and you say, I need
Mhm.
a cover. Here's the manuscript. What do you think? And then they'll give you their possibility, and then you hire one of them. Same with an
Okay.
editor. You can say, hey, these 5 editors do this type of book that I do.
Mhm.
Who wants the project, and then you work on a budget and you figure out who's in your budget and all that.
Nice.
You could also go to a site like Fiverr, or
Mhm.
there's other online sites that have just freelancers but then you have to do your own vetting, so you can get
Mhm.
someone who just sucks, so you
Mhm.
have to figure out who's good. So that's why I went with Reedsy, because I'm new, and I'm like, I just need someone else to vet these people for me, because I don't want
Yeah.
to like hire an editor and find out that I know more than them. They hand it back. There's 2 mistakes. Oh, there should be 4,200. Are you kidding me? I'm an idiot. There's no way I was that good. Right. So that would be the first step, would be you want to hire an editor. You want to hire someone, because whatever you're doing, you're looking at it like, this is what I didn't realize about an editor.
Mhm.
Like, when you have a manuscript, you're looking at it from the writer's point of view. You're looking at it from the
Mhm.
guy or the girl who's had this idea. I should say woman. I'm sorry. I don't mean
Mhm.
to offend any females here. I'm very much of a feminist. I'm going, any girl, a man or a girl, but a man or a woman writer. Your manuscript is whatever it is. It's going to be
Mhm.
editable, first of all, and you have to understand that you're coming from like your ideas point of view. An editor
Mhm.
comes from the point of view of the reader, so the
Mhm.
editor is looking at it from someone who's never seen this, a
Mhm.
fresh take, and they're not in your head when you created this, so they don't have any reference points. So
Mhm.
so that's where they give that's hard to realize, is like, they're like,
Mhm.
wait, this doesn't make any sense, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then those is part of the errors that they correct, is like, the reader's not going to get what you're talking about, or this joke doesn't land, or that. So that's what I would say the first step would be to get an editor, and to begin to
Nice.
look at, and a book cover. You want to begin to begin to visualize, what is it that your book um, looks like. And
Mhm.
so for mine, this is mine. I
Yeah,
have a
I like
whoopee
it.
cushion,
Yeah.
on the front.
Yeah.
And the reason why I chose a whoopee cushion It's because it's the simplest version of what I'm talking about in terms of the muscle flex.
Mm-hmm.
You're setting the whole idea of the funny muscle is you're flexing to get a laugh, and so
Mm-hmm.
you're setting up your audience to look left, and then you're hitting them right with a
Mm-hmm.
different kind of thing. And the whoopee cushion is the perfect version of that. The whoopee cushion, ideally in an ideal world, we have beautiful silence and quiet, and then the
Yeah.
whoopee cushion and the sound it represents just so totally violates that norm that we set
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it gets a laugh, especially if someone gets blamed for it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a perfect, like a very basic, and obviously it's a fart joke. So
Yeah.
it's blue and
Yeah.
it's base, but it's a very low
Mm-hmm.
res version of what I'm trying to do here. So to me,
Nice.
all three books have a very, like, the second book has a big nose and glasses on the front,
Yeah.
and the third book has a the flower that squirts. But
Yeah.
all three of those
Yeah.
you set up something that's a very a benign,
Nice.
a very a normal thing, and then you benignly violate it
Nice.
as
Are there worksheets in there? Like, how's the book laid out? Is it just like a book, like a regular book, or is there like worksheets and templates and
yeah.
that kind of stuff to work in
The only work there's a in the book.
with
Look how
back?
beautifully oh, you
I was
can't even
saying
see it
with your
because of
background is
my
gonna, yeah. There you go,
yeah,
in front of
there
you.
you
But
go.
there we go. Oh
Anyway,
yeah.
but yeah, there's an exercise in here one of the things I offer is an exercise where
Mm-hmm.
you can begin to find your own comedy lens, and I walk you through some of the steps and questions you can ask yourself in order to begin to hone down your comedy lens. And the
Mm-hmm.
great thing about the comedy lens is once you begin to figure it out, the material begins to really erupt from you. When I
Mm-hmm.
began to realize that I'm this clumsy aspie hole who's sort of
Mm-hmm.
like trying to be an old dad. That's the other part of my comedy lens is
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'm 57 and I've got a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. So it's just funny, like, to watch me stumble through their new age world. And so all of a sudden I begin, because that was one of the big problems that I had after the second Tonight Show. I was like,
Mhm,
I have the whole world in front of me and I don't know what to make funny. Like so I would like,
mhm,
the joke was I would sit at my desk and I'd be like, why are lamps funny? Why are
mhm.
paper towels funny? Why is the bottle of cleaner funny? A microphone is funny. And I was like, I don't know what to make fun. I can make everything funny.
Mhm,
With the comedy lens, you begin to go, oh, I'm going to focus on this type of material because this is where I'm coming from. So for me, it's a lot of
mhm,
family stuff. It's a lot
mhm,
of things where I'm noticing as an Aspie
mhm.
things that are off key, and then I'm laughing because half of them are my fault.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
because of my own idiocy that it happens.
So I'm very this comedy lens thing is very interesting to me because I feel like every comic who does not have a special can benefit from this because
Yeah.
um I think to your point is like how are you memorable? Now does the
Yeah.
comedy lens in your book, and I'm like not trying to spoil your book here,
No, it's okay. Yeah.
does it get down, does it try to expose their vulnerabilities? Are you trying to get those people to really strip away who they are and be like, I'm a survivor of abuse, or my mom was
Yeah.
an
Well,
alcoholic, or like, my cousin married my dad, like, is it something like that, or
yeah.
is it more like who I am at, like, hey, like for me, I'm a 37-year-old white guy who's a father of two, like, is it more what people like, because the audience has to relate, so is it more like what they
Right.
can visually see, or is it more like really stripped down to like um to someone's like the core of what really gets this person to tick, and therefore memorable then. Like you think of like Louis C.K. and you think like, man, this
Right.
guy's memorable for the fact that he's like a philosopher kind of, but he's also like a degenerate. And you think of like Dave
Right. Yeah.
Chappelle.
He's like his comedy
Yeah,
lens would be a degenerate philosopher,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like I'll tell you, there's four questions that I have them
Mm-hmm.
answer.
Mm-hmm.
What personal truths define you? What topics in life make you laugh? How do people who know you describe your humor? And when are you at your funniest? And I break down all four of those questions.
Nice.
And you like the idea of the lens is not to expose a personal, like your deepest wounds or anything, unless
Mm-hmm.
that's what you want to do. Some people, that's where they find their humor.
Mm-hmm.
What it's meant to do is to give your take an original angle,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can begin to so the crowd can begin to relate to where you're coming from and remember where you're coming from and either
Mm-hmm.
relate it to themselves or to someone they know.
Mm-hmm.
What I say in the book is that there's a reason why the second season of a sitcom usually does better and it seems funnier than the first season, is because we
Mm-hmm.
know the characters more. We begin to
Mm-hmm.
see each one of their comedy lenses more clearly. Kramer on Seinfeld is way funnier the second season because we
Mm-hmm.
see who he is, and when he walks into the door, we are like, okay, we
Yeah.
know who this guy is. What's he going to do, and why? How's he going to react to what's happening around? So
Mm-hmm.
you begin to identify more about like no matter what the topic is, it's like, oh, paper towels. Well, a clumsy Aspie hole is going to look at paper towels and is going to see them as something different than, say, the guy who makes a big deal out of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So, the guy who makes a big deal out of nothing could be like, paper towels. Why are they so long? There shouldn't be so much paper in the towel. For
Yeah.
me, I would be like, a paper towel. I would notice that I don't know, that somebody didn't put the paper towel back where it was supposed to be, and I couldn't find it when I was needing it. So now I have a paper towel emergency with no
Mm-hmm.
tools. And so like there's a different way to look at that thing. I mean that's a great example, but that's just not the
I no, I'm following
but
along.
yeah. So to me, the comedy lens is it's the difference between being like I call it a corner quipper, which is
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's just funny because it's a funny idea, but we don't really know and remember who you are because we
Mm-hmm.
laughed, but we didn't relate it to anything in specific. Whereas with you have a comedy lens, it's like, oh, that Aspie hole really is bothered by these kinds of things.
Yeah.
That's like my dad. My dad's that way. Oh my God, I get this guy,
Yeah.
he does, that guy gets no respect no matter what he does. Like somebody shits on him, and it's his wife, it's his kids, it's his coworkers. Oh my God, this poor guy.
Yeah.
I know a guy like that, or I'm like that, man. Nobody ever gives me any respect, and then now all of a sudden you remember the person and because you relate to him more, not just because of
Mm-hmm.
a catchphrase, but because that catchphrase represents a take, an angle
Mm-hmm.
that's personal.
Nice. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that. I like yeah, it has to be personal. It has to be
And
personal. I think that's
it's not a physical thing because I had
yeah.
two physical comedy lenses. The first one I had was a tall, no, it was the pale guy from Florida. I'm like, oh my God, like, no, duh. I'm pale and I'm from Florida. And the second one was a tall, bald comedian.
Yeah.
And it was like, though I was given, like, I thought I was giving them what they needed, which was a
Mm-hmm.
clear idea of who I was. But I was just physically, that's what I was. But they didn't know
Mm-hmm.
where I was coming from. And the problem with an Aspie hole is we don't make fun of ourselves very easily.
Yeah.
So it took a long time of personal development to admit that I was even this thing that could be made fun of. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't get that I was funny in this way. I didn't get that when I was yelling at, like, why is why is the glass half empty? Because you bumped it, Dad, and you spilled it with your elbow.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it, clumsy Aspie hole. I wasn't getting that I was the funny one. I was
Yeah.
the ridiculous one. And now I turn the laughter back on myself instead of just going, the world's funny. Ha, pop, 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 pop.
Yeah. No, no, I like it. I think what your book is doing is definitely a service, especially to up and coming comics, in which it does two things. It helps them define who they are and what they're instead of like doing what is like a shotgun approach where you just like spray
Right.
a whole bunch of jokes across
Right.
like
Exactly.
like hey, where are you best at? Where are your jokes
Yeah.
best at? And secondly, you're shaving off years of a comic trying to find themselves. A lot of them use the stage and having and still an open micer myself, like seeing comics up there, like just like what is happening here.
Yeah.
Your book is definitely shaving off years of doing that, so that's awesome.
And I'll give you a third thing it does,
Mm-hmm.
Mark. It gives you a game plan. And this is what
Mm-hmm.
I noticed. This is what I was really frustrated about all the other joke books or the
Mm-hmm.
humor writing books that I was reading. They were talking a lot about it. They were saying, this is what humor is. This is what
Mm-hmm.
the, joke telling is. But they weren't
Mm-hmm.
saying, here are the 5 things, your 4 things, or the 3 things you have to do in order to get it done. So I give
Mm-hmm.
you that game plan. The humor blueprint is like you go through these steps.
Mm-hmm.
It goes from an idea, using your lens in order and heightening devices in order to create these laugh punchlines. And
Yeah.
then those punchlines you can choose from and then use those in a movie. You can use those
Mm-hmm.
with your friends. You can use those in a stand-up act. You can do whatever
Mm-hmm.
you want with them, once you work them with the other words that are needed to set them up,
Mm-hmm.
in a joke. but the idea of, like a bed that's a seductress, like that's an idea, that's a joke that you can go,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I that's only one of the many punchlines I could have done, which was my bed is a very tempting bed.
Yeah, yeah.
There's other ways you can go with that joke with other humor heightening devices. I chose that one, and then I heightened that.
Nice, nice. Well, I'm very cool. I can't get. I have three things I got to talk to you about before I let you out of here, Mike.
Sure.
One is, all right, you just wrote a book all about comedy and joke writing, all that stuff. Do you miss it? Did this book make you like, I gotta get back on that stage? Maybe not go back on the road, but like, do
Yeah.
you miss it, Mike? And do you want? Have you been back on the stage since you retired?
I've missed being on stage and making people laugh
Mm-hmm.
from the very last time I was on stage to now. So for sure I missed it. What I don't miss is traveling. I don't miss being away from my family. I don't miss airports. I don't miss
Mm-hmm.
hotels. I don't miss any of that stuff. And what I've realized with funnymuscle.com is I
Mm-hmm.
can do all these bits. I'm doing these really funny bits on screen, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to do my conversations now. I do a lot of wig work, I do a lot of character work,
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of editing, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm getting some of that back, but man,
Mm-hmm.
you're right, the live laughter coming from a crowd, it's
Yeah.
just like I can still smell it. I can smell the combined breath, and it's glorious because there's a real high to that. There's a real high, like
Yeah.
there's a real power to being in front of a group of
Mm-hmm.
strangers and then making them laugh. Because every one of them in your audience thinks they
Yeah.
can do what you do. Every one of them
Yeah.
has made someone laugh before. Like there's no
Yeah.
other real job where like like you don't hire a plumber and go, well, I could have done this, but I hired you instead. It's like, no, I'm hiring you because I can't do it. But
Yeah.
everyone's made someone laugh before. So
Yeah.
you have to really be funny to get strangers to laugh and to
Yeah.
pay you $25 to do it.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. My next question is, are you, and then you're going to tell the audience where this came from. Are you getting Jason Sudeikis to help plug your book for you?
Oh my gosh. If he would, I would take his help in a
You were
second.
his roommate. Talk about that. Talk about being
Jason,
Jason Sudeikis' roommate and all, and
Jason.
where you guys, like, where you guys left off at?
I know Jason from Second City. We
Mhm.
when I was where was I? I was in LA. No, I was in Chicago, then I moved to New York, then I moved back to
Mhm.
Chicago, then I moved out to LA. And in that time, Kelly Leonard, the Second City producer, called me and he
Mhm.
said, "Hey man, we're putting together a theater in Vegas
Mhm.
at the Flamingo. And we need a cast to be on the main stage there. Do you want to
Mhm.
be in it?" I was like, "Sure, of course." So we flew to Chicago, and we met all the other cast members, and one of them was this guy Jason, and I didn't know
Mhm.
who Jason was. I mean, Jason was nobody at the time.
Mhm.
He was, you know who he was? He was George Wendt. Remember Norm from
Yeah.
Cheers? Hey
Yeah.
Norm,
Yeah.
that's his nephew, and George is his uncle.
Oh, I did not
So
realize that.
yeah, I
Okay.
didn't either. And so immediately I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
so we got to be friends, and we were like, oh, why don't we room together? And he was at the time dating Kay Cannon, who's
Mhm.
now a very famous director and writer and stuff. And so the two of them were my roommates, and so they were a couple in the other room in
Yeah.
Vegas, and I was the guy down the hall. And yeah, and so like one of the story I tell in the book is of Jason. He's Jason was, God, he was so funny. And we noticed at the Meridian, which is the hotel or
Yeah.
the apartment complex that we were staying
Mhm.
at. It was like kind of corporate apartments that Second City we were renting out there. And he noticed that there was all these signs up all over the complex. It was kind of like, for Meridian residents only. There's going to be a chess tournament on Sunday. Make sure you bring your chessboard. And stuff like an accountant will come in and tell you about retirement. Meridian residents only. Bring your notebook. So there's all these like kind of like very very
Yeah.
funny to us announcement. So Jason was like, I'm gonna do some of these. So then he went to Kinko's and like printed up. He printed like exactly how they had theirs, but then he
Yeah.
did his own, and they were so funny. Like like one of them was um uh oh, let's see, basketball fans, or ever wonder if you could go one-on-one with an NBA star, former NBA star, whoever he put down, Magic Johnson will be
Yeah.
at the Meridian complex taking on all comers. Bring your sneakers, Meridian residents only. Another one was like, learn to stunt drive in the Meridian, parking space. Senior drivers only. Wrestle a crocodile in the pool. Nature specialist, blah blah blah, will be here for one day only to teach you how to wrestle your own croc. Wear comfortable clothing, stuff like this. So he would just do these like one after the other and post them up, and he put them in between all the real ones. And then finally, the lady that ran the Meridian complex had to call our producer and was just like, "Hey man, you got to stop. Whoever's doing this, they're very funny, but we have to see." They would tear them down. He'd go at like 3 a.m, and he did this, I'm not kidding, for like a month, not like a week, not a day, but a month, to where it just got
was he a good roommate, or did he suck as a roommate?
Oh, he was great. Oh yeah,
yeah.
he and Kay were great. They were. I have nothing bad to say about them. I turned him on to. I taught him about Monty Python, and I taught him about weed. So
obviously, like, it's a working relationship, but you guys live together. I mean, would you feel comfortable reaching like, hey, Jason, you mind, like, doing like a thing with me just to get the word out?
I wouldn't even know how to get a hold of him. Here's the thing:
just
what
tweet
happens
at him. Just tweet at him, like,
famous. They create a wall around you. So people like me, coattail grabbers, or have a tough time finding the coattail. We're like, where is it? I'm looking for it. Hoist me up, boy. and it was funny because when he made it, that was sort of like during the time where I was retiring and sort of like setting to the side and just being a writer. So I didn't really think about reaching out to him or talking to him in that way. And then now, like, I wouldn't even know how to get a hold of him. So Jason, if you're listening, I'm sure. Like,
I have 100 subscribers. I doubt he's one of them. So
well, see, you never know. So call me. Use your finger phone and call me. Hello, fingers.
The last thing I want to end on is kind of give me what, like, a day. Like, I'm just fascinated as someone who not trying to break into the world of being an author, because I'm just not good at that skill, but of just like being someone who's like happy doing their own thing, which, in your point, you've been happy being a stand-up, an improviser, and an author. Can you kind of like walk through at a high level like what a normal day is like for you? Just get to understand like what it's like to be like a comedy author.
Yeah. Well,
especially now during this big kind of push to get your book out.
Yeah, after I wake up and do I have a masseuse, an in-house masseuse, and a chef, so I have them cook me up an omelet and give me a rub down. No, I mean, I'm a dad with 2 little kids that are going to school, so every morning starts with I'm the wake up guy, so I wake up everyone in the house. Now, how I became the morning person and everyone else is not, that's the ironic twist that you never can count on. So now I'm the first one up, and so that's my first job. And then what I've learned about writing is that you have to write every day. You have to the muse doesn't wait around for you and tap you on the shoulder and say, now's the time. I have a great idea and let's do it. You have to show up and just start hammering out some crap. And within that, as you begin to do it more and more, good ideas start to come out. And the thing that I would like, if anyone wants to be a writer, the thing that I didn't realize that I would just tell you is, you just have to do a first draft. The first draft sucks. It always sucks. It's never going to be good. Stephen King's first drafts are better than ours, but they still suck. For him, they're horrible. So he just hammers it out, and then he goes back and he changes it. What I think that we think is that you write something and then that's done and it's there, and it's never that way. And it's the same with jokes. Like, how it is when you write a joke, you come up with something and then you find tags and you find different ways to word it, and then you get it until every single word is important and any word that's not necessary is out. So my day is basically, I have certain rituals that I do, because that's part of being an Aspie is you like the thing.
I want to hear about these rituals. I'm a big fan of rituals. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, good. So
yeah,
one of my big rituals is I do my morning pages, and morning pages is a concept that what's it from? There's a book that I learned it from. I'm sorry, whoever wrote that book. It's a pretty famous book. But
I think Tim Ferriss, if you know who Tim Ferriss, I think he talks about doing morning pages or like 5 minutes. Yeah.
But there's a woman that originally had this in a book, and I read this like way back when. And so morning pages are basically, you just, without stopping and without editing, you just write for a certain amount of time. So you might set your timer for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or a half hour, and you just type out, and you just get used to the idea of word, finger, screen, or whatever. You can do it by hand also. And what that does is it just warms up your muscle
Mm-hmm.
of your writing muscle. It goes from up here out to your hands and then onto the page. And then when I'm finished with that, then I do a lot of social media stuff. So what I'm doing is I have a lot of set up sort of tweets and Facebook posts that I share, and they bring people to my site, to my funnymuscle.com site. So
Mm-hmm.
it's ways to begin to using SEO and the uh, um, internet
The
to
algorithm, yeah.
algorithm to send people my way. And then I'm always trying to write new material. So
Mm-hmm.
I try to do a new Facebook post every day that does some kind of a joke. And then when I do that joke, like the other day, I was my daughter and I had to take our dog to the vet, and this veterinarian started talking to us in that sort of sing-songy voice, like, oh,
Yeah.
that they do to dogs. But then she
Yeah.
was doing that to me and my daughter, so she was talking to humans in that same voice, like she couldn't shut it off. So I did this whole bit about like what would she be like on a first date.
Yeah.
Then I created this video where I set that up, and then I become her first date, and then I have her. It's like, well, do you think we should get the cheese sticks as an app? Who's your hungry boy? Look at your big tum tum. And then I sort of that going back and forth, and then I edited that and took the script and I
Yeah.
created the video and then I uploaded it. And so that was the day I did. So
Wow.
every day I try to do a piece of content like that,
Yeah.
and then, I've got basically from the time my kids leave for school to the time they get home to work on that stuff. Like
Yeah.
today, I worked on the second book. I'm writing that second book, so I have that outlined, and I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
hammer out the copy on that. So I worked on that for a few hours. So every day I'm just writing. One of the things that they say, like, you need 10,000 hours before you can become an expert at anything. That's
Mm-hmm.
like Gladwell,
Yeah.
and Malcolm
Malcolm
Gladwell.
Gladwell. Yep.
And So what I did was I gave myself a million word challenge. So for a year and a half straight, every day I did 2,000 words of morning pages without stop until I did
Mm-hmm.
1,000,000 words. And through that I got blog posts. I got part of this book. I've
Mm-hmm.
got other ideas, stand-up comedy stuff, just letters that I wrote, just anything I could think of. I would just write every day, and until I got 1,000,000 words, and I
That's
clocked in a
awesome.
million words. Yeah, I'm gonna do a book on that, and
Nice.
that'll be one of the challenges that I offer to people. And so yeah, so my day is like it's a lot of writing, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of producing material that will bring people to my site, and then a lot of it is learning. I go to the University of Google in the University of YouTube, I just study self-publishing. I study freelancing. I study stand up.
Mm-hmm.
I watch endless clips of you comedians. You're brilliant. I mean, there's so many great, funny new comedians out there. In fact, in my second book, I'm using a lot of examples from people that I find on YouTube, and
Mm-hmm.
with links and credits and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't take credit for anybody's stuff. And I'm breaking down some of their stuff to show how they organically use some of these humor heightening devices. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of what I'm doing now is really analyzing how other people do their stuff, and use my system on top of that to sort of see how it breaks down. So that's
Nice.
kind of like what my day looks like. And I eat. I
Yeah.
eat ritual food. I eat, a banana and a yogurt in the morning.
Okay.
I power up it for lunch, and then I eat very little at night. So that's, if you're wondering how you get this,
You look in good shape, dude. I'm not. Yeah. It's just, but
thanks,
but
thanks. That's because I put Vaseline over the lens.
well, Mike, I could talk to you for almost another 2 hours. You're so fascinating. I mean, we didn't
Thanks,
even touch
man.
about the fact that your wife was also in entertainment. You guys had your own
Right.
radio show with, with Cheryl Hines. You have a
Oh, that
fascinating
radio
life.
show. Yeah, I could talk to you about
I
that
know.
forever. That's
Well,
another
we will.
story.
When your next book comes out, let me
Okay,
know. We'll get you back on, man. I can't wait
for
to drop
sure.
this. Just to again plug for your book and your website. So again, check out.
You
Check
could
out.
have this book. This book could be yours.
I mean, for $15, I mean that's not
Right.
bad at all. I mean, finding your funny muscle, and you can get a copy. I'm going to post the link in the show
Oh,
notes for
good.
this, for funnymuscle.com.
Yep.
And check out, not when you go there, don't just don't buy the book, but also check out Mike's other works. He has so much stuff on there, old stand-up clips, blog posts. I guess some of that stuff is the morning pages we just talked about, which is
Yep.
pretty cool. But yes, looking forward. I will get my own copy of Finding Your Funny Muscle. Can't wait for the
Thanks,
next two
Marc.
books to come up. And best of luck. I don't know if you're doing a book
Thanks.
tour, but good luck on that if you're doing one of those. And I'll be
We'll try.
I'll be tracking your career. So let me know whenever you want to come back on. You got an open invitation here, Michael.
I appreciate you, Mark. Thank you. This has been a blast.
I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm gonna stop the recording, but I'll say bye properly. All right.